Hi, my name's Janine Ramsey. Welcome to our session on trauma-informed aquatics. I feel so honoured to be here with you today and to be contributing to the Blue Knot Day of 2021. The theme's just so fitting around building a trauma-informed community. And I really hope that you'll gain something of value as we talk about what that means in relation to aquatics and how aquatics fits in to the trauma-informed world and the trauma-informed community. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we work and pay respect to the First Nations peoples and their elders, past, present, and future. So before I get into the topic, it might be helpful perhaps for you to learn just a little bit more about me and my background, as that will help you to understand the kind of work I'm doing now and where that's come from. I'll just move this little picture out of the way. So I guess you could probably say it could be summed up by saying that I've had a lifetime in aquatics. I started out as a young swimmer. I probably started a swimming club, I think, when I was about 4 or 5, and went on to swim competitively as a young teenager and through into my teenage years. And then about midway through my teens, I switched into synchronized swimming. I'd also been a gymnast earlier, so it was sort of like the perfect fitting of the whole thing. And I really loved that. So I actually swam for the New Zealand team around that time, and for the duet for New Zealand around that time as well. And since then, I've continued on with master swimmers and synchro. I was a swim school owner and teacher for about 25 years. Like many people who end up in the aquatics industry, I went to uni to do a degree for a real job. And while I was doing that, I was teaching swimming part-time. And I never really left to do my real job. So I'm still doing my part-time swimming job. So maybe someday I'll be able to call it my real job. Anyway, it's progressed on, and probably the last 20 years I've been involved in teacher training, swim teacher training, and a few other mental health education roles, which have really helped to, I guess, enrich the work that I do in aquatics and bring new knowledge areas into the pool, I guess, and the aquatic area. And I guess that's what's really developed and morphed, if that's the right word, into trauma-informed practice in aquatics, and really seeing the gap for that and the need for that to bring the industry on board with that kind of knowledge and expertise in their practice. So that's how I've come to be where I am today and to be with you today in this way. I have quite a strong vision for trauma-informed aquatics, which is that we have a trauma-informed aquatics industry worldwide, really striving for that. And my mission is to protect and empower our precious children, their families, and all involved in the aquatics industry through the embedding of trauma-informed practice in aquatics. Bit of a mouthful, but and maybe a bit ambitious, but it's really where I'm focused and where I'm heading with this work. There are two sides actually to aquatics and trauma, which I'll address today as we go through these slides. And the first is around the prevention of harm side, which is a big part of the work that I do. And this is around the education in trauma-informed practice for swim teachers and swim schools, for coaches and other aquatics professionals. And the other side, which you might be quite familiar with, is the benefit of healing trauma through participating in aquatics. So the opportunities for relief, healing, and relaxation and joy for people who've experienced different types of trauma. So it could be complex trauma, relational trauma, or single event trauma and PTSD type experiences. So, and for people of all ages, from infancy all the way through. So they're really the two sides to aquatics and trauma. And we'll talk about these two sides today. We'll start with the prevention of harm side. And what does that actually mean? Go into a little bit more detail about that. You're probably aware, living in Australia here, that this is a place where it's pretty much a cultural norm to swim. And it can be quite difficult for people if you haven't learned to swim as a child, or you come here from another country and see this, place that's surrounded by water and everybody participating in swimming, and to maybe not feel like you quite fit in. So even with the children learning, if they haven't participated in lessons through in their preschool years with their family, certainly by the time they get to school, it will become a part of their school curriculum by the age of 6 or 7 years old, at least, probably earlier. And there are many developmental benefits to early years swimming, so learning to swim in the early years, aside from the actual skills themselves. But there's also risk. And it's really, really important that our children are protected in this learn to swim process. It's absolutely critical. There are quite high potentials for harm within the aquatics industry. Aquatics it's unique in some ways in that we're dealing with the element of water. So that's a unique environment within which to be working with anybody. And it's not unique in that it's an environment where we have children and we have unequal power bases. So we have coaches or teachers. We have children who are at risk of sexual abuse. The vulnerability of children in swim lessons and squads can be confronting, just as it is in churches, gymnastics, scouts, other areas like that. Can be quite a high risk area, and you may be quite well aware of this kind of risk and incidences that have occurred or do occur around this topic. And this is something the industry is working really hard to address, and I'm certainly 100% on board with the improvement in this area that's taking place and needs to continue to take place. Another area for potential for harm is around early grooming. So what I mean by that is in the learn to swim practices themselves, sometimes there can be practices involving coercion and forceful practices that can be quite abusive to children. It may involve physical restraint or force, or verbal threats and pressures that are applied in certain ways. And all of these kinds of types of pressures can really condition the child to become quite submissive and to tolerate abuses and almost to normalize them, actually, that this is part of what it means to come to swimming, is that I will have to suffer in the learn to swim process. And parents also likewise may be conditioned to believe that this is a necessary part of the learn to swim process. There could be a lack of consent, and the child may lose a sense of agency in the process. And so for the parental caregiver pressure also, it may be that parents feel really under pressure for their child to gain their water skills quickly, so as to prevent drowning. And so parents may also come with their own, parents and caregivers, their own traumatic experiences or memories from their own, really difficult water experiences, or maybe tragically having even already lost a child or another family member to an aquatic incident. And that can really apply a lot of pressure onto the child and maybe even the instructor in the learn to swim process. So the potential for re-traumatization and for being conditioned to tolerate higher levels of pressure and abuse can be increased because of some of these factors. Now, you may be even familiar with some of these things as I talk about them. My colleague, Dr. Jenny McMahon, who's Associate Professor at University of Tasmania and a former Commonwealth Games gold medalist swimmer, has been involved in research now for around 14 or 15 years. And she specialises in researching children in sport and abuses in sport in particular. And her research has revealed, and to quote, a toxic culture in swimming for amateur and elite swimmers, female coaches, and how some forms of abuse, for example, psychological abuse, neglect, non-contact physical abuse, have been normalized in the name of winning or improved performances. Her research has also further found that the long-term consequences of these types of abuse is that athletes have experienced ongoing trauma and suffered from eating disorders, depression, alcohol, and prescription medicine addiction. And finally, that these findings align with trauma and abuse research outside of sport. But that's some pretty confronting research findings for us all to take on board and to really, I think about, well, how are we going to do things better moving forward, and how we're going to keep participants in aquatics safer. So we could talk a little bit more about this. So what does it mean to be trauma-informed in aquatics, and how does all this fit in with those research findings? And the theme of the day today, what does it mean to have a trauma-informed community? So if we talk about that in relation to aquatics, the principles are just the same around these core principles, and then the application into the aquatic industry is where we become a little bit more specific and look at, well, what does that actually look like on the ground, and in the pool, what does that actually look like to be trauma-informed? So I've got a few slides here with a number of bullet points to try to help explain a little bit more about what it means to be trauma-informed in aquatics. Well, first of all, it means to understand what trauma is, how it develops, and how it impacts behaviour, learning, and well-being of individuals, families, and communities. We have to start with those basics of understanding about trauma itself. We have to understand the higher potential for causing trauma or re-traumatization in aquatics due to the unique pressures, environmental risks, and the vulnerabilities present, including the unequal power dynamics that I mentioned earlier between children or parents and coaches and teachers. It means to view behaviour and behavioural responses through a trauma lens. So rather than seeing people as being naughty or difficult or stubborn or misbehaving, we bring a little bit more education and awareness around what it means, what trauma responses look like, and our compassion, and we're able to view these behaviours through what we call having a trauma lens. So to recognise traumatic response and not shame, blame, or punish people for their attempts to manage their traumatic responses, and to respond sensitively to individuals in distress. In other words, to be trauma responsive. It also means to empower individuals to develop skills and a sense of agency. So by a sense of agency, it's about being empowered and feeling like there's a sense of having some control over what's going on and what's happening to my body, what I'm doing, and being able to say yes or no. Being trauma-informed also means, to empower individuals to heal and to strengthen, and to treat people of all ages with respect and dignity and equality. And that includes infants particularly vulnerable in the learn to swim process for having things done to them that they may not consent to. So it means to collaborate and to share power and to be transparent and trustworthy. So as you can see, these principles are not different to the principles of trauma-informed practice in any area of the community, but, you know, of course, particularly relevant in aquatics as well. And final slide on this, to demonstrate swim teaching and coaching practices that are free of the potential for causing trauma or re-traumatization. For example, entrapment or restraint of a child or a learner, isolation, like for example, making somebody sit in an isolated area or on a platform in the middle of the pool, exploitation, shaming and threats, and any forced practices, so forced entry into the water, forced submersion, forced back float, or other forced or pressured or coerced participation. So yeah, that's quite a big description on how I see what it means to be trauma-informed in aquatics. So I've got some slides here, just a series of still photographs to show you a little girl. She had a trauma when she was around 2. And so here she's just early around 4, around her 4th birthday. And she's learning to overcome her trauma in an unforced submersion. So I've actually been working with this little girl, and I'm taking the video, and I had invited her if she would like to try putting her face in the water while I took a video of her. So that was the extent of the verbal encouragement. And these are her steps as she went through going down to put her face in the water, and coming up again and being very successful and pleased with herself, just over the moon with her brilliant achievement. You can just see the joy all over her face, and it's just so lovely. And how the sense of agency you can see there, and just how really pleased with herself she feels for having made that great big huge achievement there. So that's a truly unforced submersion. So what you could see there is that the power between her and myself was shared. There was collaboration. She had a choice for sure. She was not restrained in any way or forced. And as I said, she had a sense of agency and control. Her voice was heard and taken into account. So if she had said to me she didn't want to do it, or she had just walked away and played to do something else, which was another way of saying no, that would have been absolutely fine. She was respected in the process, and the instructor is a source of relative safety, therefore trustworthy from the child's perspective. So you could see that the child, she felt safe. She was socially engaged. She was looking at me, engaging with me with eye contact and all her joy, and the joy from mastery of a challenge that was overcome and achieved within her window of tolerance. So it's a really beautiful thing to share that experience with someone. And it's a really good demonstration of a trauma-informed experience in aquatics. We might set aside the trauma-informed side of things in regards to the harm and education side of things, and have a little talk now around the healing power of water. So the second part of what I mean around trauma-informed practice in aquatics. You may be able to think about this yourself, and things that you may have done that involve water, or that you know others have done that are in some way therapeutic. There's a pretty long history actually of, well, in this scientific article here, it's called The History of the Baths and Thermal Medicine. But there's really centuries and centuries of history around the therapeutic benefits of bathing and the water, different temperatures of water. So, for example, thermal hot baths or possibly colder water variations, the Roman baths way back in the days. So there's a very long history in humanity around the therapeutic and healing and even beautifying and spiritual powers associated with the water. So this is nothing new, but perhaps it's around the scientific measuring now that's able to be done that we maybe start to feel like this is something new, even though it really isn't. There are many benefits to various systems in our body. So there's sensory system, our nervous system, lymphatic and cardiovascular systems all benefits through experiences in the water with a soothing and an interrupting of the current patterns. So sometimes if you're feeling quite stressed or anxious, hopping into the water, experimenting with the temperature can really help to interrupt those, whatever your nervous system is doing at that time, and be an interruption to change it to a calmer experience. A hydrostatic pressure, so that means the pressure from the water itself, that increases as you go deeper and deeper in the water, and it alters the body physiology accordingly. So if you're just on the surface, maybe into chest or neck deep water, it's just a gentle pressure on the body, and it can feel like a gentle hug actually, especially if the water's just a nice tepid temperature. And you also may have experienced the power and the lovely feeling that can come from floating. Even now, there are commercial float tanks where you can pay money to go and lie in a capsule filled with salt water and just lie back and float and really relax. So the power of floating is also quite incredible. So there are many ways to get everyday relief and healing with water, whether it's your shower at home, going out in the rain, holding on to ice also, or putting ice on your face or your neck can also be really helpful in helping to regulate your feelings and your mood. And the floating, of course, is very nice. I don't know if there's still a child in you that likes to stomp in puddles, but there is one in me, and that can be pretty fun. Watching fish in a tank, and even just splashing water on your face, cold water or warm water, whatever temperature feels best. So these are some really pretty accessible everyday ways to get relief and healing through water. For the more adventurous types, you might like to go into the ocean or try things like snorkeling, scuba diving, surfing, kayaking or sailing. So depending on what your body will allow you to do and your aquatic skills and so on. But these kinds of activities also can be very therapeutic, if they are comfortable for you. With swimming, in particular, freestyle swimming, with the alternate left and right action, it can be quite meditative and also promote integration of the left and right brain in the same way that other activities with a left and right rhythm can do, such as walking or tapping, like drumming on drums or anything rhythmical like that. So that's another way of, in combination with the benefits of being inside the water. And of course, because your face is in the water often when you're swimming, it promotes a regular breathing pattern. And by regulating your breathing, that also helps to calm and control the physiology. So it can be quite meditative. There are various things now also like aquatic yoga and aqua fitness. And blue spaces, you've probably heard plenty about green spaces, like getting out into the forests and the hills to recharge and rejuvenate, which is of course wonderful. And blue space is the same kind of thing, but it's about going to the water. So the oceans and the rivers and the lakes, maybe urban water features, and just to visit them, to look at them, even to walk beside them, even if you're not able to go into the water, can be very therapeutic and very healing, as you probably well know. And believe it or not, virtual images can also be healing. And there's a bit of research around that now, that just to actually look at images of the water and listening to the sounds can also invoke similar healing sorts of changes in the body. So there's a very interesting video. I'm unable to show it to you, unfortunately, today, but if you're interested, this is the link here, called Blue Health, and it talks about a huge program of research that's been undertaken that was really exploring the benefits of people interacting with blue spaces and how that was helpful for well-being. And as along with also the risks associated with interacting with blue spaces. So if you're interested in looking that up, this little YouTube clip is really interesting, just a couple of minutes long. And I've also got coming up now over the next few slides quite a number of other articles and papers that you might find of interest if you'd like to learn more about the healing power of water. So these are some scientific papers, so they're a bit of a heavy read. But if you like that kind of thing, I'm a bit weird and I like reading this kind of stuff. The first one was around ethnicity and aquatic lifestyles. The next one was called A Lot Better Than Medicine, Self-Organized Ocean Swimming Groups as Facilitators for Healthy Aging. The third one here, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, Sensory Integration and Aquatic Therapy. This page here, the beneficial effects of short-term exposure to scuba diving on human mental health. The next two are around the blue spaces, Blue Care, a systematic review of blue space interventions for health and well-being. And this last one here, Blue Space Health and Wellbeing, a narrative overview and synthesis of potential benefits. So those are a few scientific papers, and there's plenty more if you like to Google this kind of thing. I've also got some articles, a little bit of an easier read. The first one's by the Arthritis Foundation of ACT, talks about hydrotherapy. The next one is a lifestyle article that was written in The Guardian around the benefits of living near blue spaces. The third one, Royal Life Saving Australia, Communities, Health and Wellbeing Benefits of Swimming. The fourth one here is the Illawarra Mercury newspaper had an article around Australian first veteran surf program that was at 7 Mile Beach fairly recently. On this page, the first two are around aquatic yoga or aqua yoga, and tell you a little bit about what that's about. The third one is a new program called Float Fit, which is a type of program where there's a sort of a floating board that's sort of anchored in the swimming pool. It moves a little bit, but it's kind of a semi-stable platform upon which you do various activities, sort of yoga type movements. So that's a new interesting activity to try out. And the last one here is a podcast by two of the leading researchers in the Blue Health Project that I talked about the YouTube video just a couple of slides back. And that was taken in May, so it gives you a little bit of an update on their findings from that project. On my own website, there are some videos there that are you may find interesting or enjoyable around various things to do with aquatics. So if you like to look at that kind of thing, there's a link there for you. And I guess really the bottom line is you really have to want to do it. So whatever it is that you do, the benefits are optimized when you want to do that thing, whatever that thing is that you want to do in the water. Being forced to do it, it's not going to probably have the same benefits to your well-being as if you really want to do it. So for me, that's me there. I absolutely love going snorkeling, and I like to go as often as I can and all over wherever I can go. And I just absolutely love the flotation feeling and just being cradled by the water. I love looking at all the fish. I like not having to worry about looking at a dive watch and worry about my depth or my time or my oxygen and things like that. And I just can go out in the water like that for 2 or 3 hours or even 4 sometimes, and just at a time, if I stay warm enough, and just really, really love it and find it very, very healing. So it's very personal, and it's about finding what works for yourself, and being a little bit experimentational and a little bit curious. Yeah. So that pretty much sums up our time together today. I really hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and that there maybe was a gem or two there for you. Thank you, and feel free to contact me if you'd like. There's my email address down the bottom there, and my website. And if anything, has in the presentation has brought up anything uncomfortable for you, please feel free to reach out to the numbers that are being offered, the helpline numbers that are offered during the day today, and or to just gain some support, as I know that this can be a really difficult topic as well. So thank you all very much, and it was really my pleasure and privilege to be here with you today. Thank you so much. Bye for now.